gone missing. When a parent's changing life upends yours. I always have to remember the subtitle. And host for these compassion chats. This is a brand new effort. It is grassroots, as you all can see. We are super excited that you're here. And I thought it would be good just to share the three kind of main topics or main points, the reason why we're doing this. Number one is to really help all of our caregivers who will join us over time recognize that you are not alone. We all feel that way to varying degrees. So that's goal number one. Goal number two is to create a group just like this, where we can have people come join us however you are. I put a necklace on, woohoo, dressed up for the first one. No need to do that. We're not going to ask you to do homework before you come. Just come as you are. And then thirdly, to introduce caregivers from the senior Alzheimer's and dementia communities where we're starting. We're hoping to expand that, but to bring resources to this group, not necessarily as the organizations or agencies they represent, but as the humans who are superbly well skilled and trained and have a heart for helping we caregivers in all of our many needs as we go through this journey. So with that, I am super excited to introduce our very first guest, Adele Lund. Adele and I have gotten to know each other over the past couple of years and really have become friends. Honored to call her that, a colleague and a friend. And I'd like to read, just by mini way of introduction, something Adele sent to me a while back as we were preparing for this. Through a 32-year professional career that has included roles in sales, business development, and counseling families, at the heart of most everything Adele has done is finding new ways for individuals and families to have more meaningful conversations and more honest discussions, all with the goal of better understanding one another. Her topic tonight is healing conversations. So Adele, thank you so much for diving into the deep end with us on this. Super excited to have you as our first guest.
Oh, I'm so honored. I can't tell you. You know, Susan and I, we've had so many wonderful conversations. Hopefully this is just as wonderful as all those others have been. So I'm looking forward to it.
Super wonderful. Before we dive into the topic though, it would be kind of cool to help us understand a little bit about Adele, the woman. What brought you to this work? How did you get into it? And what over the course of 30 plus years have you found to be the most satisfying aspect of it?
You know, I got into this, I would describe it as complete happenstance. But then again, because of my faith, I know that it was a God-inspired, divinely inspired moment. And so I was originally I'm from Eau Claire, northern part of the state, for those who are not from the area. And my husband got a job many years ago. We came to Milwaukee for a couple of years, and now, 47 years later, we're still kind of getting adjusted. But when I was working here in a corporation, and one day I got a call from my mother saying that my father had been diagnosed with terminal cancer and he had 3 months to live, which certainly rocked my world. They were still up in Eau Claire, and so after a couple of weeks, I decided I better end that career of mine. It was really more of a job at that time as opposed to a career. So I ended my job there, kind of stepped back and started heading up every weekend to Eau Claire to spend time with my father and my family for that limited time that he had. Well, after a couple of months, it was clear to us that he had more time than the doctor had indicated. And I had little ones at home at the time. So, they were in lower grades during the week, but on the weekends I would be heading up north. And so after a month or so, I decided, I'm not really good at sitting home all day when the kids are in school. I'm not good at being still. And so I'm not now, and I wasn't then. So I got a temp job, went out, found a temp agency. They assigned me to, my first and only assignment was at a retirement community in the Metro Milwaukee area. I didn't know such a thing existed, certainly didn't understand what it did, who it was, and how it all played into the greater world. And so they hired me for a week to stuff envelopes, and I was really good at that. I nailed stuffing envelopes. So after I was so good at that, they decided, well, maybe you should hang on and maybe you can help us answer some phones and cover the reception area a little bit over in the marketing area. So I did that. And I kind of like walking and chewing gum at the same time. I was pretty good at that over time. And so one day I was there for about a month, and one day someone walked in. They wanted to look around, they wanted a tour, they wanted some answers about the community itself. And I'd listened enough, I'd seen enough that I said, no one's around, but I can help you. So I walked them through the community. We bonded. We had just a wonderful conversation. Eventually came back and moved in. I didn't get the sale, but I got a little credit. And that was the auspicious start for my career. So what have I gotten out of it? What does it mean to me? More than I can possibly express to you. I get emotional actually just thinking about this, because out of nothing came my whole purpose. Everything that I do in the course of a day over 30 some years is all a part of what this is all about. I am getting emotional. And so guiding families through this maze of long-term care, helping them to understand the possibilities, not that it's not an end, that it's a new beginning, helping them over the rough patches. That's what this means to me. So instead of having it be a career, it became my passion, my mission in life. And at some point in time, probably 15 years ago or so, I remember saying to someone when they asked me something about what I do, and I said, I have the gift, the pure gift of going to work each day, even though it's not work to me. And every single day I touch a life. And I get to go home knowing that I touched a life today. I did some powerful things, and they pay me to do this. Who gets this gig?
Yeah. It's interesting, Adele. I suspect this is a theme we're going to be hearing from many, many people over the course of the next year.
Mhm.
Everybody has a heart for the humans involved in all
True.
of this. And it's really been a revelation to me, as most of you know. I didn't even know you people existed 5 years ago. So I'm delighted to have gotten to know some of you. Let's talk a little bit, Adele, about healing conversations, because I know in my own experience as a caregiver, and for others, maybe many others, maybe most, oftentimes our conversations really couldn't be cataloged as healing, contentious maybe, defensive maybe, uncertain. How do we either set them up or kind of steer them in ways that ultimately they become healing to everybody involved, whether it's a caregiver and a loved one, whether it's family members, whether it's attorneys or providers? How do we do that?
So I have come to firmly believe that so much of how we act and what we do is tied to our language. And so instead of calling, healing is a hard thing for some people to get at least that word, I've seen it trip up a lot of people. I pivoted to using the words having honoring conversations. Now, more people, and this is just my own little study, which is never going to be in a medical journal. It's not going to be anywhere. It's just what I've learned over time. So the honoring conversations, what that instantly seems to project to someone I'm working with or talking with is, it has to be less about me, because honoring someone in a conversation makes it more about them, which is the point of all of this. It's too often about us. Right. And so the less about us, the more about them. Instantly, everything is changed in what you're doing and how it's being perceived. So having honoring conversations means that I'm going to ask more than I tell, and hopefully I'm going to listen more than I talk. Because if it's still about us, we're probably going to talk more, because of course we have the answer. We know it all.
And I think an aspect of that, Adele, sometimes is just nervous energy.
Oh, of course.
How do I get past me and what I'm trying to accomplish here and really change my focus as a caregiver to others?
Mm-hmm. And that also denotes that they're likely looking at the outcome they need to accomplish. So it's a task, as opposed to, let's put tasks aside for a few minutes. Let's take a few moments, and I'm going to go into this. I have to prepare for this conversation mentally, emotionally, find my words, and my intent and my mission. So intent is a word that I use every day, probably too often, but it works for me. And so what is your intent in this conversation? Yes, I would hope for an outcome, whatever that outcome has to be for the particular conversation. But today it's not about the outcome. It's about my intention and how can we go a little deeper in this conversation instead of keeping a surface conversations. Too many conversations that I've been a part of in families when I've sit in living rooms, and I've done this for hundreds and hundreds of families over the years, sitting in a living room, either facilitating a conversation, navigating, or sometimes refereeing a conversation living between siblings. And sometimes it's between the family and mom or dad. And so in those situations, my goal is to make sure that the person that we are really here all for, the parent usually, that they understand that this is an honoring opportunity, that we're all here with the right intent, even if it's not true behind me, where the family's usually sitting farther away because they don't want to be near this. And so it's about having the intent be open and me framing what that is, and starting with the love, the compassion, the good intentions, and how are we going to, why are we here, and how are we going to help you or support you in a better quality of life, whatever that means.
You know, it's so interesting, Adele, as I listen to you, caregivers come in all kinds of personality types and life experiences and good and bad kind of things. What you said resonates, I think, with all of us here, because we are here to learn, and we're, I think, kind of predisposed, perhaps personality wise, to listen and nod our heads in agreement with what you said. There are others, and we've all been around them, caregivers who are just not wired to honor. They want to cut to the chase, they want the project done, and they want to just run the show. And if you have anything touchy-feely to say, get out of my way. Yeah. What do you do then?
Well, so first of all, I would be taking a few moments with that person who doesn't have the same capacity or the same inclination, or as you described, touchy-feely. And that's often how they would, that's exactly how they'd usually describe it too. I would be trying to get at that person's, what is their intention? So how do you feel about this? So here's another thing that we are good at not doing. When we're asking questions or we're getting into a conversation, we're genuinely trying to learn something, whether it's us as a caregiver or whether it's a sibling to sibling or whatever that is. We have a tendency to not ask questions that we don't want to hear the answer to, number one, because we already know that, so we're not going to go there. I've also found out that there are a lot of very loving families who don't have a history of honest conversations. I'm not talking about lying. I'm talking about not being able to talk about the tough stuff. And if you can't do that, then let me ask that person who is a little more obstinate, I might use that word, not with them, to say, so help me understand, what's your perspective on why we're here tonight? Or what is it that you want to accomplish out of tonight? Because they're usually the task-oriented individual. We're here to accomplish something. And if we're not accomplishing something, it was a waste of time, even if we made some strides or got some more common understanding. So they have to be heard. Whether they should be heard is a whole other question, but they have to be heard. Otherwise, you're not going anywhere with them anyway. So let's take a moment, take a few steps back, and let's validate. And that's an important word also. Let's validate why they're here, let them be heard. And now, usually after they've been heard to some degree, they're not going to be listening, but they're also going to be a little less open to the possibilities of what someone else is saying, not necessarily agreeable. That's like a stretch. But I think we are so sometimes focused on getting the task done or going down the path. Here's the plan for the night, or here's the plan for this afternoon. And instead, you have to take the time in the beginning, which will save you all kinds of headaches and time later on if you let them express themselves and get it out.
So how Are there particular phrases? Are there words you mentioned, how do you feel about that? One of the things that you've mentioned as you and I have talked is, what's the picture in your head,
Mhm,
right?
mhm,
And again, that to someone who is task oriented, that
mhm.
can that can feel like an annoyance. Picture in my head. What are you talking about? This is what we need to get done. It's not, I'm sure it's not just here, say these words and all magic will occur,
Right.
but how do you as a caregiver really maintain your composure, right? Because we get
Mhm.
triggered, especially in sibling relationships.
Absolutely.
What tips do you have for that kind of scenario?
So, asking them, so, I use that phrase a lot. So what's the picture in your head? Here's the thing. Oftentimes people who aren't inclined to be more emotional, more emotional or that, as you say, touchy-feely, um, they have an inclination to, again, be task oriented. So I want to get into their head. And so I might say to them, when they say something to me, I might say to you, so when you said that to me just now, what was the picture in your head? What were you thinking of? What was that picture when you said that to me? Now, I also use this for especially seniors when they can't find the words. Because think about this. When's the last time someone asked you for your opinion? What do you think about this? 10 times a day at least. But when's the last time someone asked you, how does it make you feel when I say this? We don't ask about feelings.
Right.
And so when you ask someone how they feel about something, they don't know how to answer because no one asks them that. If you get a quick answer, it was what do you think? Because we've got opinions galore, enough to last a lifetime and then some. But if we ask them how they feel about something, there's a silence. And the same thing can happen when you ask them, what's the picture in your head? What do you mean? I don't have pictures in my head. They do, but they don't take the time to find them, to recognize them. And so when you ask them something like that, there's going to be silence for a moment. We tend to take silence as obstinance or not being agreeable or being difficult. Quite the opposite. I have found that those brief silences are a gift, because if I got a quick answer, we're still in the conversation at this lower level, or a higher level, I should say. But when there's a silence, that means I've got them thinking in a way that they haven't been thinking before. So I've got them on a new path. So on that new path, I give them 30 seconds. That's a long time in silence. So sometimes they can come up with something. If they can, I'll say, well, let me ask that another way, and I'll find another way to frame the question about what I just asked them. And 9 times out of 10, I get a response at that point in time with another brief silence while they're thinking about it and trying to come up with it. And I can't tell you how many times I've done something like this, and then the person who's answering me says something, and then they'll go, where'd that come from? Because they just said something they've never said before, out loud at least. It was rolling around in their head, but it looks different even to them when it's out front and they can see it. When they hear themselves say it, it's like, whoa, what
Yeah,
was that?
incoming, right? Well,
Exactly.
and I think what you just said, Adele, about finding another way to ask a question is really a key component in the honoring aspect
Mhm.
of conversations, isn't it? You're demonstrating that you are engaged, that you are genuine about wanting to understand what they're trying to tell you, and that a quick answer really isn't going to satisfy anybody.
Agreed. And it doesn't make that conversation go to the next level. And so if you're staying at the same level throughout, you're not really growing on either side of the equation.
So how do you, in all of your years of having these thousands and thousands of conversations, I'm sure, how do you reflect back on a conversation or a series and decide that it truly was healing? Or, maybe there's a little tear in the fabric that needs to be mended.
That's a really good question. Now it's going to take me a moment to think about that, because you've made me go on a different path. See how this works? um, so I'm going to suggest that one of the things that I've missed this last year is sitting in front of someone and watching body language. First of all, that's a huge tell for me. I never used to recognize that. I was so into my own head and how I was presenting. But when I stopped doing that and started listening more intently, the body language just started screaming at me, because it's not, they're not flailing their arms or something of that sort. It's a little resting of the shoulders that come down a little bit. It's a little smile on the corner of their mouth, as opposed to, it's not a toothy smile. But those little things, when you see the guard that they were on guard before start to peel away, that to me, that's a powerful moment. That just moves me. I mean, I get goosebumps when I think of some of those conversations I've been in, where all of a sudden I see, and usually by the time we're about to part, they're usually saying something that validates what I believe I just saw, which is, this has been helpful, or, well, I didn't think it was going to go this direction, or whatever. There's just so many, you have to understand that they're going to express their thoughts in their way. So I can't have a preconceived notion of what this is going to sound like to have been successful, or to have been meaningful to them. But if I'm cued into them, which I've gotten much better at over the years, you'll get it. You'll see it. You'll feel it.
And that's something that really is a process of learning.
Huge.
And I don't know that when you're thrust into a caregiver role, as many caregivers are, you have any awareness of these things, or any thoughts really, other than, what do I need to do? Am I doing it right? Did I do it fast enough, or did I do it too fast? It's all of this, to your point earlier in this conversation, the focus is on self. How do I do this?
Mhm.
And I think for caregivers, that may be, if not task number one, hurdle number one in getting to what you're describing here, Adele, as honoring conversations.
True. So here's a little, I mean, I have lots of stories that I use in all the talks that I give and things of that sort, but there's one that just comes to mind as you were talking, Susan. So there's a story about a little girl who was coming home from school, and she's, probably second grade, I'm going to say, and she's made a picture in school today. And so she comes running into the house full of excitement and energy and enthusiasm and saying, Mom, guess what? Waving her picture in front of Mom, and Mom's busy setting the table and making dinner. So Mom says, what? But she continues to make dinner and do her things. And so the little girl says, Mom, guess what? Guess what I did? And Mom says, well, what, honey? And the little girl finally says, Mom, you're not listening to me. And Mom says, well, honey, of course I am. And the little girl says, Mom, you're not listening to me with your eyes.
Ah,
Are we listening with our eyes? Are we giving someone our full attention, as opposed to being distracted or being elsewhere, mentally or otherwise? People can tell when you are engaged and when you're not. They may be gracious enough not to say something about it, and they sometimes may not even be fully conscious of it, but people feel when you are present. There's something powerful when you are genuinely present. And not a lot of us do that on a regular basis. Now, sometimes we simply can't. Life is too full of noise and everything. So for a caregiver, I'm often saying to them, I'm going to suggest that on a daily or week, however your caregiving goes, and whether you're living with that person or whether you're just going to visit someone as a caregiver, I'm going to suggest that before you go there, you determine that today I have 20 minutes that I can stay focused, because I've got a lot on my mind. And so we don't have to have limitless superpowers. We have to understand that we're human. We have limits. My intent is good. So keeping that intent in mind, my intent is to be present, but I also know that I have limitations today because I've got a lot going on. So I'm going to go, and for 20 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever you decide in advance, I am going to stay focused, because now you've given yourself a goal that you can meet, that you've agreed with yourself mentally. And now I'm going to be very centered during that time. And after that, if I do something for them, I'm helping to pick up, or I'm making a meal, or whatever it might be, I'm still there, but I'm not intent in the way that I was for that 20 or 30 minutes or whatever it is. I think we have to give ourselves a break. Seriously.
Amen. Yeah. And that's a marvelous sort of a mindset tip, right? Make up your mind prior to going into this. Well, you guys, as we knew, women, ladies, sorry, this screams by, right? And so, Adele, we could talk for hours, as I'm sure many of us could. Do you have one last, as we begin to wrap this up, one last idea or tip to leave with us as we conclude our very first compassion chat?
Oh, I can't believe we're almost done. This is,
I know.
yes. Oh, well. Okay. So, my last thought, I guess there's one thing that has moved me over the years that's been very helpful to me. And that is when you're in the midst of talking with someone in crisis or someone in a difficult situation, it doesn't have to be a full-blown crisis, but just with tough stuff on their plate. I'm going to suggest that we tend to have a belief, conscious or otherwise, that we're supposed to have some answers for them. But the fact is, oftentimes, it's happened to me many times, I'm in a moment and I think, I have no answer for this person. There's nothing that I can't solve this for them in any fashion. The good news is we don't have to have the answers. Here's what changed my whole career. And it is when I had that epiphany of, I'm an expert. I'm a professional. I hate the word expert. I'm a professional, but I don't have all the answers. And no matter how well I know you or how much time I've spent with you, there are still big pockets of you that I don't know and never will. So instead of me trying to solve your problem, I can help you by asking you more questions about what you say. And by my asking questions, I help you to go deeper into why, the what, the how of your thoughts and what you know about you that I don't. And it's amazing how you can see the light bulb go on, the aha moment when something hits them that came through me asking questions, not me having to find an answer for them. And it's more authentic to them anyway, because it's their resolution, as opposed to anything I might have floated to them that they'd have to craft and reshape to be real for them. So that's ask. So it's listen more than talk and ask more than tell. And with that, you really can't go wrong.
That is phenomenal. We started a little bit late, so if anybody has a question they'd like to just kind of throw out, or for Adele before we kind of sign off, if so, unmute and shoot away. Patty, are you looking for your button?
Well, I had to get my tea and put something down. I haven't had my after dinner tea. Number one, it was great conversation, and Adele, you do a marvelous job. And I've encountered all of these little plateaus that you discussed often, because that's what I do. They call me at 5 o'clock in the morning and say I took the green pill instead of the red one, you know.
Ooh.
But or as I've run into now, a parkie who has Parkinson's, she has Parkinson's, he has Alzheimer's.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And that's a situation that is very difficult. But he's very adept at hiding. He knows he has it,
mm-hmm.
and he's extremely adept at hiding it. But when you have the two of them and you cannot separate them, it's very difficult to find out what the crux of the matter really is right there. You know, because she's having a problem and he's got to have a problem. If she's got a problem, he's got to have a problem. And I liked what you said, which is sort of refocusing when you talked about, I do not have all the answers. It's not something I could possibly say in that situation, but what is, you know, I'm not quite getting it. Let me ask you more questions. bounce them off me. That came to me while you were talking about it. And I thought, because I was in this situation yesterday,
Okay.
and I thought, I could have done more. I should have done more. Where the hell was my brain? You know, and that was probably a great focusing moment for me. So I thank you.
Oh, I'm honored. And, you know, let me suggest one more thing, and that is, instead of even saying, I'm not sure, I don't have an answer, but I want to ask some more questions, instead of even announcing that, I might just go in to say, so you know what? I want to better understand what you just said. So let me ask you and then ask the question. Otherwise, you're almost like giving them a chance to say, no, I don't want more questions. You give them you give them an opportunity to say no, or to be, I say obstinate, but that might not be the right word. So instead, just go on and let them know, and it's an honoring thing to say. So I'm genuinely interested in learning more about this. I'm not sure if I could just, let me just ask you this question, and then you ask a question around that. And the point is, I usually say 3 questions, and that's, I know there's a business thing that ties to that too, but it really works. 3 questions around the same thing. So they've already told you something. So then you ask them a question on what they just said. And here's the thing, it changes how you listen. If you're listening not with an intent to get the answer yourself, but rather with an intent to look for the next question in this conversation.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It changes entirely how you're engaged in the conversation.
Yeah, good focus. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's fantastic. That is fantastic. I hate to cut us off, but I want to honor everybody's schedule and time commitment here. Just as a reminder, I'm Susan Marshall. You can reach Adele at phone number, if anybody's interested in making a call, 262-259-2345. Again, Adele's number is 262-259-2345. And her email address is Adele, A-D-E-L-E, at Adele Lund, L-U-N-D, consulting.com. So Adele at adelelundconsulting.com. I want to thank all of you for being here. This has really been just a fun kickoff. I know we're going to continue, and we're going to go deeper and deeper, and we're going to have way more people join us. But to reach me, if you have questions or there's a topic that you'd like us to focus on, SusanAMarshall.com is my website. In fact, you can go there and find the entire lineup for the rest of the calendar year for these Compassion Chats. Debbie Deutsch, who's with us today, is our next guest. Super excited about that, Debbie. You can also reach me at SusanAMarshall.com or phone number 262-567-5983. Again, phone 262-567-5983. You can also, of course, find us on Facebook and LinkedIn. If you want a copy of Mom's Gone Missing, SusanAMarshall.com is where you'll find it. Once again, thank you all. This has just been wonderful. Adele, you rock.
You know, what an honor.
Again next
Truly.
month, and please bring a friend, a neighbor, somebody who would benefit from these kinds of conversations with us.